And thank you for giving me the honor of moderating the last panel, The Future of the Transatlantic Order. We've got until 1:10 to talk about this and to resolve all outstanding questions. And I have 4 splendid panelists with me to talk about this, and I am your female quota on this panel. And I'm going to hand the first speaker role to Espen Barth Eide. Espen, who I think has basically had every security-related job in Norway that's available, and is now apparently doing some downtime as UN Special Representative for Cyprus, pending other responsibilities, I assume. And he's asked me to tell you that he's not here speaking in his UN official capacity so that he can speak freely. So, your topic is the future transatlantic security order, Espen. You've got 10 minutes for this, and I'm looking forward to your remarks.
Thank you, Constance, and let me first thank Kate and the committee for inviting me. It's great to have some downtime from my downtime down in the Southeast Europe, where we're trying to overcome a historic divide, which I think would be very important for the transatlantic relationship, if EU-NATO relationship could be significantly improved, but it's not the topic of the day, so I'll spare those comments and rather focus on the big picture. I think largely the committee it's a great conference, and I think the title says, if not it all, it says a lot, because focusing on the 3 challenges being Crimea, Brexit, and the US election, which of course is code for the new administration that came out of the US election rather than the election itself, suggests that while there are several challenges to the transatlantic relationship from the outside, Crimea being one of them, 2 of the ones you wanted to focus on are inside. And I think that suggests my entry point as well, that the transatlantic alliance is only strong, live, and kicking if we believe in it. And if the members of the transatlantic alliance themselves invest politically, socially, economically, militarily in the continued health of that particular relationship, which has been pivotal not only in providing the security umbrella, security framework for its own members, but also in a broad sense. I'm not saying NATO now, NATO is part of it, but the West, defined as the transatlantic partnership on every issue, has been very instrumental in building the global order as we know it. First, during difficult Cold War times, where it was a marked alternative to the communist, socialist economic, political, and military order, and then after the 1990, when it became the centerpiece of what became known as the liberal order, when the world really became globalized. And if we look back some 20, 25 years to the massive changes that happened at the end of the Cold War, which we have been speaking about so many times in this audience, and the succeeding years, one thing I would like to highlight, which you all know, but I just want to bring it to the foreground again, is that the security issues that we were most concerned about in conferences like this one, or in other conferences with all the same people present, where basically security challenges originating in the periphery. It was in the margins, so we had the sense that there was a strong order. It was there. It has its ups and downs. There were differences. Some U.S. administrations were more popular in Europe than others. Some European moves were more popular in the U.S. than others. But overall, it was there. And then the challenges were found in places like Afghanistan and elsewhere. But just, the front line was seen to be in how are we doing in Helmand, which admittedly is not really sort of the centerpiece of the global economic order, but it was more a centerpiece of the global chaos order, where the threats to our long-term survival would come from. And what has happened over the last years is that we as the West are again seeing other well-functioning states that are not necessarily adversaries, but on the other side of several equations, and who are also thinking strategically, investing, growing, and which leads to a world where we once again see the existence of strategic competition. And strategic competition, it never left the scene. It was there, in a sense, behind the scenes and in the margins, but it was not at the level that we've seen for the last years. And that's a major shift which we have to understand. There are two mistakes we can make. One is to overlook it and say that this is just temporary, it will go away, it's not a structural shift, it just happens right now because of certain political developments in some countries, Russia included. That's one mistake, which is wrong, in my view. The other one is to believe that the Cold War is back as we knew it. This is not the old Cold War. It's not, that doesn't suggest it's better or worse, but it's different. It's a different lineup of power and political motives, but it's relevant to understand it in the concept of strategic competition, and we have to relearn strategic competition. And inspired by the excellent panel that we are just coming after, I also want to say that if people are discovering this now, it was because they didn't really they weren't ready to watch the signs when they started to come. So for exactly 10 years ago, this weekend I think it is, I was in the Munich Security Conference listening to Vladimir Putin basically laying out a very clear message. Constanza and a lot of us were there, and Putin said exactly what he thought, and then he did exactly what he said, which is that Russia, we had great expectations when the Cold War ended. We wanted to invest in new institutions, OSCE and so on, of togetherness and cooperation and discuss real things together. But you, the West, exploited our weakness when we are down. Now we are not down any longer, we're back up. And if you didn't get it before, niet means niet. And when we say no, we will put force behind it. We will be clear. And this, of course, just a year and a half before, or less so, a year plus before the Crimea war and everything that happened later. And I was at the time in government, and we were, as Norway, I think we were relatively early in trying to raise the attention that, again, not suggesting the Cold War is back, but as something changed. War is again a phenomenon that may happen in Europe. And large powers, close friends of ours, I'm not mentioning names, but some of them to our immediate west, were suggesting the opposite. No, war is over.
Ireland.
Yeah, particularly, almost. No, war in Europe isn't happening. You know, we have new asymmetric threats, but the real front line is Helmand or Kandahar or somewhere else. Not to say that was not relevant, but there was a strong pushback in NATO circles for even suggesting that there is something wrong with the sort of immediate post-war model. Now we're coming to grips with it, which is good, but I think my message on this front is simply that it's not the old coming back. If I may quote Mr. Lundestad tends to say, and I love that quote, so if I may steal it from you, says that history doesn't repeat itself, historians repeat themselves, that's something else. I'm sorry to steal your thunder, but you have more, I know. Yeah, but we really have to understand what that means to us. So there's a set. So what we have here, and this is the first half of what I'm going to say, we still have the whole plethora of chaos-generated asymmetric challenges, which are as relevant as they were 10 and 20 years ago. It's not like terrorism is over. That global threats coming out of state collapse is gone. It's still there. But combine that with the return of strategic competition between strong powers which have strategic intent that is different from the West. And we have, in a sense, a threat to the system as we know it from above, because the assumption of some kind of great power stability is challenged, and from below, because of the disorderly challenges that we already have been, that we still refer to as new threats, but they have been the same new threats for the last 20, 25 years. So I think at this time they're not new any longer, but they're still there. My second point is our own belief in the validity and the relevance of having a transatlantic order, where I am somewhat worried. And I'm somewhat worried. I think, again, we have the Munich Security Conference is coming up, and Mike Pence is coming. I think there is a lot of European colleagues are looking forward to hearing what is the sort of the first elaborate statement from this administration about what they actually think about this. Remember, this is the arena, it was the arena of the Putin speech. It was the arena of Joe Biden's hit the reset button speech. A good intent, work in progress. And now what will be the message? So the jury is a little bit out, but there is a lot of people in Europe who are fundamentally transatlantic in instinct who are wondering, what does America actually think about this idea? How important is it? I mean, nobody will say it's not important, but how important, how much is it worth investing in it? But also, I think on the European side, there's a need to understand that there is a consistent message from Washington, which precedes not only the Trump administration, the Obama administration, and the Bush administration, but which has been around for a while, which is, we're there to help you, but you also have to help yourselves with us. And so the whole idea of the transatlantic balance is on the table, and we Europeans need to take that very seriously, and we Norwegians, I think we do, but we have to further take that very seriously if we want the transatlantic partnership to continue. My worry is very much about how much we believe in it ourselves. There is the rise of protectionism, a rise of nationalism. It's not only America first, but I think we can see a series of countries will have themselves first, Netherlands first, France first, whoever else first, depending on what kind of political developments we see in the coming year. And that is a serious questioning of the idea that the West is something beyond itself. That it's in our solidaric, long-term self-interest to promote a system of values, a system of economic order, of free trade, of international cooperation, of strong institutions, of a rules-based order, which of course we were never absolutely perfect at, but we were normally better than most challengers. And now the question is, do we believe it in ourselves? Hence why I'm very much supportive of the title, suggesting 2 internal and only 1 external challenge to the system. And I think we need to spend some of our time discussing this. There's one more thing. I spent some of my last years with the World Economic Forum, and one of the things we were investigating a lot was the rise of inequalities in countries. Because one major message about global economic development over the last years is, on the one hand, you've seen an equalization between states. So a number of previously poor states have become middle-income states, and a number of previously middle-income states have become richer, whereas some of the traditionally rich countries have become still in the category rich, but less rich and less prosperous than they were. So there's been a global equalization of economic power, but in almost every country, a radical growth in inequalities internally. This is relevant also in the Security Conference, because this has led to, I think, is one of many driving forces. It's not the only one, and it's dangerous to say it's the one, but it's one of the driving forces between a crisis of politics in the core of the West. And it's interesting, again, with Brexit and the US, if 2 countries epitomizes the old idea of building a liberal order is the United Kingdom and the US. Now it's other countries that are in the forefront of defending this idea, and that's something we have as a transatlantic conference really need to take seriously. For Norway, I think we need a foreign and security policy that tries to internalize these changes, see how we can hedge against them, how we can keep investing, but also look for partnership when we see them. And I think that it's an important part for any government in Norway is also to build strong relationships, keep strong relationships where we had them, but also build, for instance, to powers like Germany, which I think is extremely essential as one of the sort of European leaders of this time. And I actually belong to those who think that will continue even after the next election in Germany. And also to Brussels, because while I do not think that the European Union will become a defense alliance in its own right, I think that's much better served by being sort of a part of the broader NATO setup. I think the success of the European integration project is imperative in order to keep the transatlantic alliance live and kicking. If we allow that to degenerate, and here in Norway, we tend to be more focused on our relationship to the EU than to the health of the EU. But the truth is that the fate of the European project is much more important than exactly what we call our relationship to it. So these are some initial thoughts, and I think I spent my time now. But I think it's very much about whether we believe it in ourselves, because we are not credible to the outside world if we don't believe in it ourselves.
Thank you very much. That was, I think, a very useful first salvo. And as a German, I'm grateful, and I'm now not going to say for your remarks about Germany, but for you as a Norwegian citizen of a country that's not member of the EU, expressing this commitment to European integration. No doubt. But the larger point here, it seems to me, is that I think I would quite like this panel to, at some point or in discussion, examine the role that European integration or the EU proper has to play in the European security space. If necessary, I can supply some thoughts about that.